Welcome to J.R. Hendrick Texan Consort. Here is part 2 of Is Jim a Dangerous Man? Reading the narrative, Jimi Hendrix. We start with December 5th, 1993, 7:45 a.m. Central. It was a cloudy, windswept Sunday morning when Karen picked up J.R. for church. 8:30 a.m. Central. At church, Reverend Child delivers a stunning Christmas program. 11:45 a.m. Central. J.R. is having his lunch at Crockett House with his cousin, Joe, and friend, Andrew Selford. I wanted to put my fist in Charlie's mouth for what he did, Joe said. He is as bad as Jim Bob Horton was in prep school. Putting your fist in his mouth wouldn't help things, Andrew Selford said. I just think maybe J.R. should stay away from him for a while. You got any ideas? J.R. asked. Yeah, I do. You know, Joe knows that Professor Galworthy. Well, Galworthy knows this professor over in public affairs named Randy Wild. I was thinking maybe hanging out more with your PRSSA buddies and church buddies instead of your swimming buddies. Watch it, J.R. said. Brent Clark is a buddy of mine, and he's tight-lipped with a secret. He's on the swim team, J.R. said. 1 p.m. Central. The Spirit Club Sunday service begins with the Gospel Light Choir singing Silent Night. Then the congregation begins singing, O Come All Ye Faithful. Delivering the sermon on the Advent Covenant of Jesus Christ was Dr. Randy Wild. J.R. takes copious notes. He feels encouraged to be among a club of quote-unquote saints initiated to the cause of restoring Christ to the world. 2 p.m. Central. J.R. and Brent Clark go into the Spirit Club library where they discuss what happened with Charlie. Charlie's a gossip. He'd never make it well in the club, Brent said. I met him in the summer of 1985 at the School for the Blind. And he was nothing but a loudmouth even then, J.R. said. Why your father picked him for economic analyst this summer amazes me. To keep each other in line. You see, I always believed that I am not my father's favorite son. J.R., don't give me that Kyle is a... J.R., don't give me that. Kyle is a wanderer and a drifter. You at least try to stay near your father's side. He has a set of rules, Brent. Thing is, when he gets a little power, sometimes he changes a rule as he goes. I never met a man like your father before. No, thing is, I'm more like my mother than I am my father, Jared said. 3:55 p.m. Eastern. Jim had gone to church earlier that morning, but now he's back in his hotel suite with Claude, drinking black coffee and smoking a cigarette. He talks about their early morning flight to Fort Lauderdale with the Sanders. 5 p.m. Central. JR is having a double cheeseburger, seated with Brent Clark and Sharon, delivering the Sunday sermon with Bishop Raymond Elbridge, a Community of Christ minister. He delivers a rousing sermon about the character of Christ. 6:55 p.m. Eastern. With cognac by the fire, Jim and Claude sit back and relax. Visiting them is Greg Sanders. He had gotten into a fight with his wife this evening because he found out that only she, Norma, was going with Jim and Claude to Fort Lauderdale to cover Hillary Clinton. But he promised that he would join Claude, Jim, and Betsy for the next week's party in Houston. 6:15 p.m. Central. JR is in his dorm room with Kevin McDonald, who is licking his wounds, still to some degree, for Friday night's soccer loss. With the loss, the Tech soccer team had lost the ability to have a playoff season in January. 6:50 p.m. Central. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Betsy had gathered some of the eggs that had not hatched. Tomorrow, she would be making a fresh bed for the chicks and gather all the chickens into the indoor chicken coop near the cattle barns. This afternoon, she and Kyle had fed the elk and placed them in the barns with the rest of the deer. 7 p.m. Central. JR and Jennifer are studying together for their Spanish final tomorrow morning. The final would take place in the lab under the direction of Isidro Sanchez. 7:15 p.m. Central. What does this thing just do? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Elizabeth is singing Silent Night to 4-year-old Thomas, rocking him to sleep. Her grandson Thomas had returned to the ranch for Christmas after working in El Paso for a little while. 7:35 p.m. Central. The phone in the Center for the Visually Impaired rings, and JR picks up the phone. It's his father. "You behaving?" Jim asked. "Yes, Dad. Studying for finals," JR said. You're glad you're not hanging out with that Brad. I don't think you're So I'm going to give you a pass. And you receive a nice bonus around Christmas, Jim said. A wrestling Bob book? Don't push your luck, boy, his father chortled. 8:25 p.m. At the Sneed Snack Bar, Jennifer and JR talk over Dr. Pepper's. Why do you let your father talk to you like that? Jennifer asked. Oh, come on. He could be joking, JR said. And is he part of the reason why you're still with Karen? I like Karen. She opened my eyes. Yeah, but you're spinning in different circles, different directions, Jennifer said. All ideology may be the same, but she's an advocate. You're not her type. I suppose you're right, Jared said. 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Jim, Claude, Greg, and Norma are at a hotel nightclub. Leonard Skinner is playing in the background. 8:30 a.m. Central. Back in his room, JR embraces Jennifer. Seriously, JR, get over your father's image and dump her. I care about you, Jennifer Bauer said. See you in the language lab. 8:45 p.m. Central. JR is in his room studying hard for his Spanish final. December 6th, 1993, 3 a.m. Charlie Nation turns his key to the Center for Visually Impaired and walks in and finds JR asleep at the study carrel. Wake up! I hate it when you fall asleep like this, Charles said. Charlie, get the heck out of here, or I'll cane you, JR said. 4:20 a.m. Eastern. Jim wakes up in his hotel room, hungover. He pours himself a fifth of whiskey as a hair of the dog to lessen the impact of his hangover. 4 a.m. Central. Kyle and Betsy wake up at the ranch. Kyle's job was to leave in 30 minutes to go to a cattle auction in Fort Stockton. He was to take a truck of 6 cattle with his prep school friend and sidekick Festus. Against his parents' wishes, he agreed to hire Festus back, despite the fact that both Jim and JR knew that Festus can be a troublemaker. Jim and JR favor his best friend James Moore, but Moore is serving the last of his duty as a Marine Corps reservist in Bosnia. 4:15 a.m. Central. JR goes to the library foyer, feeling that he has studied enough for his final exam. 4:30 a.m. Central. Kyle and Festus hop into the truck after 5 workers helped them load